Starting in the trench warfare in the fall and winter of 1914, German snipers wreaked havoc on the British and the French. And it took them a little while to catch up, to develop sniping schools, to develop proper sniping rifles and sniping tactics, so that when the Americans entered the war in 1917 and entered combat in 1918, the British knew what they were doing. In particular, they had instructors that they sent to the United States, so that when American soldiers went over as snipers, they not only knew what they were doing, but they had the benefit of American marksmanship training and British tactical training.
The NRA played no small role in this. Camp Perry, which we know of today for the annual matches, in 1918 became a large sniper school. This was the most formal and longest of all the sniper schools around the country, and indeed it too had 5 British sniper instructors, to include H.W. McBride, Herbert McBride, who wrote the book A Rifleman Went to War. But interestingly, the camp and the senior officers were all senior officials of the National Rifle Association, and it made great sense. These were Olympic-level American shooters who had been members of the National Guard, or some were even commissioned, having had no past military background, and they became the nucleus for what was called the Small Arms Training School.
Prior to World War I, the U.S. Army adopted the Warner-Swasey telescopic sight for its Model 1903 Springfield rifles. The Warner-Swasey was, to modern shooters, would appear to be a rather ungainly sort of affair that sits on the side of the receiver. It's a large box, cup eyepiece, and from all accounts, it's difficult to calibrate in a combat situation. Now, during World War I, at least the Marine Corps was able to get a few Winchester A5 telescopic sights, which look more familiar what you think of as a scoped bolt-action rifle. Marines used them, however, to what effect, it's not really known.
It was in World War I that finally it was a Marine sniper who received the Medal of Honor specifically for sniping and being a sniper. His name was John Henry Pruitt. In the incident for which he received the Medal of Honor, he exposed himself to enemy fire to take out several machine gun positions that were pinning down his fellow Marines. He survived that encounter, but shortly thereafter, German artillery, incoming artillery, killed him. So his was a posthumous. It was the first Medal of Honor ever awarded to a sniper.
On September 19, 1918, the Swiss Chargé d'Affaires in Washington, D.C., presented an ultimatum from the government of Imperial Germany to the U.S. Secretary of State. There were really only about 50 days left of the First World War at that point, but the German government nevertheless presented this ultimatum, and the ultimatum said, "The German government protests against the use of shotguns by the American Army and calls attention to the fact that, according to the laws of war, every prisoner found to have in his possession such guns or ammunition belonging thereto forfeits his life." And so here, the country that brought poison gas to the battlefields of the Western Front then confronts the United States government over its use of a shotgun.
It was a bit of a challenge to adapt a bayonet for use with a shotgun, but it was done. And the platform that was chosen for our first combat shotgun was the tried and proven Winchester Model 97 pump shotgun. They soon gained the nickname trench gun, which was never an official term, but it was a widely used and very descriptive term.
Now, most of these were Model 1897s. However, the most recent Winchester improvement, the hammerless Model 12, was also used, as was another hammerless competitor, the Remington Model 10.
One element the Americans were quick to adopt was the use of brass shotgun shells, because in the trench environment, paper shells would get moist, would swell, and then they wouldn't feed into the gun.
The interesting thing about trench guns is the U.S. Army Signal Corps took pictures of everything in France. But the one thing that we have not seen is a photo of a frontline soldier with a Winchester Model 1897. And that could be due to the German complaint of the gun being barbarous. We don't know, but there was an order at some level not to photograph the trench gun.
Here on the heights of the Marne River, overlooking the town of Château-Thierry, built in 1930, is an amazing monument of sandstone and granite. It's the same kind of monument you might expect to find in Washington, D.C., Philadelphia, or New York. But it overlooks a small French town, important in World War I, because almost every American division came through here or by here on the way to some other campaign. This place was designed and built using American tax dollars to show the world in perpetuity the military achievements, in this particular case, during the summer of 1918 in reducing the Aisne-Marne salient and moving the German positions back from the Marne to the Aisne to the Vesle River. Below the eagle is the phrase uttered by John J. Pershing when he became the first chairman of the American Battle Monuments Commission. It has become over time our unofficial purpose, and it is that time will not dim the glory of their deeds. This place today reminds us of the courage, the sacrifice, the honor, and the commitment of United States troops in the Great War here in France.
The famous Meuse-Argonne offensive began in late September of 1918, and it was the final push. It was what ended the war to end all wars on November 11th of that year. The finest and largest concentration of American infantry and Marines advanced. Soon-to-be General George S. Patton, who was leading an armored brigade at the time, was wounded nearly at the very beginning of the Meuse-Argonne offensive, and it was really the beginning of the end for the Germans.
So John Browning offers the U.S. Army Ordnance Department the M1917 machine gun, as we call it, his water-cooled, recoil-operated machine gun, which was smaller and perhaps more robust than even the excellent Vickers gun, as well as the model of 1918 automatic rifle. And these guns were the guns that would eventually equip most of the AEF in the last month of the war.
The 36th Division, Texas National Guard, used this Browning automatic rifle alongside the 2nd Division, and U.S. Marines picked up, one way or the other, BARs, used them to great effect, and were eagerly awaiting replacement of their shows with the BARs. And this happened literally on the last night of the war.
On November 8th, 1918, 2 train cars pulled side by side at this very spot. There were delegates plenipotentiary from the Allied powers and from the Central powers, the Germans. It took them 3 days to work out the details of an armistice, but at around 5 a.m. on November 11th, they had a deal. Within 20 minutes, it had been signed by both sides. The fighting would end at the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month in 1918. But that minute came too late for some Americans. Albert Beavers, private, 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines, killed on November 11th. Then Private Henry Gunther of the 73rd, he died literally a minute before the armistice. All told, this war extended from June 28, 1914 to November 11th, 1918, and it ended right here. 1,597 days, or 228 weeks. During this time, 17 million souls lost their lives. There were 38 million casualties. The cost to the Americans was 116,708 soldiers lost, with 53,402 being combat deaths. The cost to humanity of the Great War was immense. As a matter of fact, the world would change. After the Armistice came the Treaty of Versailles, with very harsh terms imposed upon the Germans. The terms of that treaty were so harsh that it provided conditions for the rise of National Socialism in Germany. And an aggressive Germany rose again. And on June 22nd, 1940, after France was defeated in what we now know as the Second World War, Adolf Hitler presided of the unveiling of the Nazi flag on the November 11th memorial right here in Compiègne.